Hi guys, Aloha Plant Life here. Just had some projects I needed to do today, so I figured why not film them. It's totally an impromptu video, no scripting or anything like that. I just have a bunch of water propagations here that I'm needing to pot up, and I figured it might be nice to have you guys join me and I can talk a little bit about the plants, propagating, various other things. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So basically, I went ahead and collected most of the stuff I need here. I am going to have to be going back and forth to my sink a bit. I'll edit those parts out for you. But in the meantime, I've got all my pots over here. I've got some of my pre-mixed potting soil here. And I've got my water propagations, tiny shovel, which I find handy sometimes for this, chopstick, always a handy tool to have, potting. And I have this lovely little box. This actually was a crate of wine. There were 4 wine bottles, or maybe 5 lined up in here. And after I was done with it, I figured this would be a nice way to repurpose this box, was to use it as a potting box so that I'm not getting soil all over my kitchen counter. Let's talk about the plants that we're going to be potting up today. I do have some of my salsa dancer hibiscus to pot up. I've potted those up in another video before, so I probably won't talk as much about those in this video since you've seen that other video. And if you haven't, go check it out. Oh, and before I forget, if you've been watching my videos and you have yet to hit that like or subscribe button, please do so at the bottom of the screen. And we also have a Begonia Maculata that I've been propagating. Probably normally would have potted this one up a little bit sooner, but I was going on vacation and unfortunately I wasn't able to get to a lot of these that I wanted to before I left. So we're gonna do that now. And then I have a lot of frost peperomias that I've been propagating, and I will talk about why I have so many when we get to potting them up. And then I have my first ever Rhaphidophora Tetrasperma cutting that I will be potting up as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and start with the Begonia Maculata. So for this Begonia Maculata, I'm gonna be using kind of my regular go-to mix for a non-succulent type plant that I'm potting up. So I've got some organic premium potting soil in here and some perlite. It's probably about a 2/3 to a 1/3 ratio. It's probably not going to be enough right now. This is what I had left from a previous project, so I will be mixing some more up during this process off camera. But in the meantime, let's talk about the pots. So normally, depending on my cuttings, I will either be using a 4-inch pot, a 3-inch pot. I'm still trying to use up these weird flimsy plastic ones, although they are kind of nice because you can't see the roots develop, but I just wish they were a little bit sturdier. Or little 2-inch pots. So for this begonia, this is actually a much taller begonia than the ones that I have propagated before. They're sitting over there in my window. Because this one is so tall, ooh, check out those roots, you guys. Tons and tons of nice roots. You have this many roots, you're definitely ready to pot. But you can see this is a really tall cutting, just giving you some reference here. It's probably almost a foot. So I'm kind of concerned about putting that in this tiny pot and having it stick up this far. I just feel like it might not be the sturdiest situation. So what I'm gonna do today, and this is kind of the first time I've tried this, is I'm gonna use this taller pot. This is actually more like, I think, a 5-inch pot if you look at the diameter of the top, but the bottom of it is still about 4 inches, but I can get this in there a little bit deeper where I feel like it's gonna be a little bit sturdier. However, I do not want to drown this thing in soil. So I'm not gonna fill this all the way with soil. I'm only gonna fill it maybe about halfway. As the plant gets older, the roots develop more. I can add some more soil to the top if I need to, but right now I just don't want it sitting in too much soil. It's gonna be too wet and cause problems. So I'm gonna set this back in here for a split second while I get the soil in here, if it'll stay. So I'm just gonna put a little bit of soil in the bottom of this pot. So really it's like maybe like 2 inches if. And like I said, I am gonna have to go mix up a little bit more soil here in a second. So once I get that soil in, I'm gonna go rinse these roots off because they have been in this water for, let's see, I think the last time I changed this water might have been before I went on vacation, so it's probably been almost 2 weeks in this water. So I just wanna rinse anything that might be nasty on that off. So I'm gonna go do that real quick over the sink, grab some more soil, and then meet you right back here. All right, you guys, so I just got done rinsing these roots off. I got us a little bit more soil. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna set this just down in that soil that I've already put in there. I'm gonna try and make sure it's nice and centered. The roots have been rinsed off. They look really healthy and good. So I'm gonna take my potting soil here. Actually, I'm gonna put it in my box because that is the point of my box, to try to keep my kitchen counter clean. And I'm just gonna start filling it in, just evenly around, moving it around. Once again, I'm not gonna fill this entire pot. I do not wanna drown these roots. I just wanted a slightly taller pot because of the height of this cutting. And just lightly tamping down the soil. So one of the things I talk about a lot is don't pack your soil down too hard. If you do that, you're risking suffocating your roots. If you do find you've ever packed your soil down too hard, or just in general, you find that soil's gotten compacted over time, that's where your little chopstick can come in handy to help aerate the soil. You can poke holes in it. Part of the problem with super compacted soil, other than the fact that you're kind of choking off oxygen to the roots, is that the water doesn't absorb as easily into the soil. So by creating those holes, you're creating holes for the water to get in there and soak down to the roots. But you can really kind of avoid that from the get-go by just making sure you're always just lightly tamping down that soil. But you do want it packed in there enough that you're not gonna have your plant falling over, right? Okay, so that's pretty good here. So let me see if I can tilt this for you guys to see how much soil. So you can see kind of how far down that soil is. It's not all the way up in the pot. It is a little bit more past the halfway point, but that's okay. When I water it, it's gonna go down a little bit anyways. So that is that. And I am going to water all of these after I pot them. I'm just not gonna take time to do it in between here so that you guys aren't waiting on me constantly and I'm not having to cut and edit this video as much. So I'm gonna set this aside. I'm gonna water it when we're done. So moving on to our next one. Let's get the champagne glass out of the way. Okay, so we're gonna move on to our little frost peperomias. I do have a lot of these. Let's see, we got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them. The reason I have so many is, actually, you know what? Let me go back, grab the plant real quick. Okay, so this is the frost peperomia. She's looking a little bit wilty right now. She did need to be watered, and I watered her right before I made this video, so she hasn't fully perked back up yet. But when I bought this plant, it was nice and compact like this. You can see how very compact that is, how nice those leaves look. For the most part, we'll talk about those slightly yellow ones. They're relevant to why I propagated so many. So I had this nice compact ball, but then there were a few that were just sticking way up. I'm talking like up here, and they were huge. And I've already propagated some of those and have them growing over on my little propagation card over there. But I have seen some that are shooting off more again. I'm not sure if these were original. I feel like these ones got a little bit longer after I got the plant, but they're starting to turn a little bit yellow. So you can see that leaf looks a little bit yellow. There's another one up there that looks a little bit yellow and another one over here. And so normally that would be a sign of a potential watering issue or a lighting issue. I know the lighting's not an issue. I have other peperomias with this peperomia. It's really far back from a south-facing window, so it's in my living room, which gets tons of bright light. You'll get to see that in a plant tour video that I will be doing here in the near future, but it's way far back, like maybe 9 feet back from the window. It never gets the direct sunlight, so I know that this isn't an issue of it's getting too much light. I also don't really think it's an issue of too little or too much water. My first thought was too much water typically when I start to see yellow leaves, but because this plant was just wilting before I watered it before this video, I know that that's not the issue either. And just feeling it, it's not an issue of an underwatering. We start to be getting a little bit crunchy possibly on some of these. I do have some watermelon peperomias where I've seen that happen too. They do get crunchy edges even though they're succulent type leaves. So I'm not 100% sure what is causing this issue. It may just be an issue of acclimation. I haven't had this plant except for like maybe 2 months now, and it's winter, so it could take longer for it to get acclimated. I think when we hit spring here in the next month or so, it will kind of perk up, get rid of these yellow leaves and start pumping out new growth. So I'm not real worried about it, but when you have yellow leaves like this on a peperomia, don't just throw them away. You can propagate them and grow nice new healthy leaves. I'm totally gonna step off camera real quick again to grab one of my original propagations from this plant so you can see what I'm talking about. Like I said, guys, impromptu video. There's gonna be a lot of cuts in here, but that's okay. I didn't want y'all to miss out on a learning opportunity. Okay, so I grabbed two that I had propagated before. This one was the largest leaf. Look how big that leaf is compared to those other leaves. So this was one of the ones that was sticking way up out of this plant. It was starting to look yellow. It was a little bit tattered. I don't know if you can see, there's like some tears and stuff. So I went ahead and propagated it, and you can see there's some new leaves coming in there, and they're very green. They're not yellow. So this plant is totally working. I was hoping maybe you could see some of the roots, but it looks like they haven't reached the outer edge on that one yet. I did grab another one that I propagated. Once again, this is a smaller leaf. You can see it was yellow. It has a hole in it too, but it's pumping out a ton of new growth in there. Put that to the side, and it's all nice and green. Once again, I don't think you can see the roots yet. They aren't all the way out to the sides, but this is proof that don't just throw away that leaf because you think it's yellow and bad on a peperomia. You can propagate it. So that's why I put a bunch of these in water. So these are the first three I did, and once again, you can see, I'm trying not to spill water while I'm doing this. They're yellow, some of them are really big, but they all have roots. Can we see the roots? Well, I'm gonna pull them out so you can see them. But there's roots there, and if you can see it, there are also little leaves already growing under the water. So it's already creating new foliage. I think y'all can see that right where my finger is. So this is for sure ready to pot up. So you saw how many roots were on the Begonia Maculata. When I start pulling these out, it's gonna look like it's way less roots. Just a reminder, peperomias have much finer, much more delicate root systems, and they take a long time to really fill in because of that. So it's gonna look like way less roots than some of your other plant, but that doesn't mean that it's not ready. If it's growing leaves underwater, it is for sure ready to pot up. So that's what we're gonna do right now. Now I do have, from my last video I filmed potting up peperomias, I have some of my mix left. So this is a different mix I use because these are more succulent type plants. This is about a 50-50 mix of premium organic potting soil and then Bonsai Jack's gritty mix. And I will link in the description a link to Bonsai Jack's gritty mix. It is what I like to use to supplement the soil for some of my succulent-like plants such as peperomias. And then I do use it just by itself, no soil added, for my succulents. I think it's an excellent product. So once again, check the description for that link. So I'm gonna use this mix, and because these are smaller plants, some of these I'm gonna put in the little 2-inch pots. Some of them are really smaller leaves. So for example, this one's a tiny, tiny little cutting. So that one's only gonna go in a 2-inch pot. I don't wanna drown it. But some of these ones that have these bigger leaves, I'm gonna put them in 3-inch pots, because if I put them in this 2-inch pot, so for example, this guy, whoo, we got some tangling going on to these roots. There we go. And you can see those roots look kind of funny right now because they're so fine and delicate that the water groups them together. So when I go to rinse it off at the sink, I'm very delicately, I might even use my chopstick, gonna try to separate those a little bit before I put them in the pot. You can see the height of this one and the size of this leaf. If I put it in this 2-inch pot, it's gonna be really top heavy and it's gonna be wanting to flop over. So I'm gonna put this one in one of the 3-inch pots. So one of these, so it'll be a little bit more stable. Once again, I'm only gonna fill maybe a third of the way with soil here before I put this in, but I am gonna go rinse it off at the sink real quick. Okay, so let me see if I can get this close enough. Can you see those little baby leaves? Right there at the top of the roots. Super green, look how green that is compared to how yellow this leaf is. So don't throw away your leaves like this, propagate them. So we're gonna go ahead, I'm gonna swap out this soil for this soil. And get that filled, like I said, maybe about a third of the way up. Maybe a little bit more. You don't want to put your plants right at the bottom where the roots are going to be just immediately growing around the bottom. You want to have them higher in the pot so they have a place to go. Looking at this one, I think I'm going to go a little bit higher. Not quite halfway, but kind of close to halfway. Once again, peperomias can be prone to root rot with those delicate root systems, so I don't want to have it too high and have it just have tons of soil drowning it below. So I'm just going to kind of set it in there. So you might be asking yourself, and then I'm gonna start filling it in. You might be asking yourself about those leaves. So am I burying those new leaves? The answer is yes, I'm burying those new leaves. You will bury your new leaves. You will not worry about it. Leaves have a way of finding their way to the surface. Those propagations that I showed you a second ago of this plant that have been growing for a while, that have the new leaves on the surface, they also had leaves that were developing underwater at the time that I potted them up, and I buried those leaves under the soil, and they eventually found their way to the surface. So that's not a big deal. Don't worry about it. They're not gonna die. I don't know, they're magical. That's all I have to say about that. Because some other plants, if you were to bury leaves like that, those leaves would probably rot off and die under that soil, but not with these. And this is another good thing to mention here, is that, you know, with some plants we talk about when we propagate, like especially trailing plants or vining plants, so like your pothos or your philodendron, you know, we always talk about like, you want to take multiple cuttings and you want to pot all those cuttings up together so that you can have a nice full bushy plant, because a lot of those plants, and also when we get to the Rhaphidophora Tetrasperma, same situation, a lot of those plants, if you just pot up one cutting, it's only going to grow one vine, right? That is not how other plants work. So that's not how peperomias work. One leaf can produce, obviously, a many more leaves, as you saw here, and a very full plant as it gets bigger. So one will be enough. If you want a fuller plant quicker, yes, you could pot more up. Just remember, it's going to grow quicker and more leaves than your pothos or vining plants. So it's a pretty fast grower. I think I potted this up like maybe a month and a half ago, and it's winter, so things are not growing as quick anyway. So this is going to be a nice bushy plant. I would say by this time next year, definitely we'll have already moved it up a pot size. But once again, you really want to wait till the roots get root bound, very established for peperomias before you bump them up. Even if it's kind of overflowing the top of a pot, always look at the roots. If it's not like a ton of roots going around there, don't bump it up. You risk creating a root rot situation. Also, don't mess with them. Like if you're repotting them, don't sit there and try to crumble soil off. The roots are too delicate. Just put it in the pot, completely in the shape it was of the pot you took it out. Roots will find a way to move themselves into the new soil. You don't need to constantly be trying to loosen up your roots, all right? And we will talk about in future videos some plants with more robust root systems, if they're really, really root bound, what you can do. But at the end of the day, it will find a way. Nature will find a way. Those roots will find a way, and they will find what they need. All right, so we've got this in its pot now. Once again, I am gonna water this as soon as I'm done filming this video. Give it a good water down, let it drain out the bottom. This plant I will put in a north-facing window. They don't like a ton of direct light, and especially when they've got new roots and they're developing, I don't wanna have too bright a light on them. So that's where these have been growing, is in a north-facing window, directly in the window on one of my propagation carts. That's where this guy will go. The Begonia Maculata is actually gonna go on one of the prop carts here in my kitchen. It will be about, let's see, 3 to 4 feet back from a southeast facing window. Begonias Maculatas do like a fair amount of bright light. The mother plant is actually living directly in my southern facing window in my living room. And a lot of what you will read online will tell you that that is too much light for that plant. I don't buy it. I used to have her on the mantle in the living room, which is about 7 feet back from those windows, and she wasn't doing anything. And so finally, I just one day was like, all right, I'm gonna move her closer to the window. I put her on the edge of the couch. That's probably about 5 feet back. And suddenly she started putting out new growth. So I gradually kept moving her closer to the window. And every time I did, she just started spurting off even more and more growth. And she's fine. She has no burn marks on her leaves, no nothing. She loves life in that southern facing window. So you can put a Begonia Maculata in a southern facing window. Just take your time, acclimate it, move it slowly into the brighter light. All right, so I do need to pot up the rest of these, but I don't want to make this video last too long. You just saw how I did that one, so you know the basic process. So I'm gonna go ahead and move on to our Rhaphidophora Tetrasperma. For some reason today, I keep wanting to say that name in reverse, so bear with me if I keep stuttering over it. So this has been, if you follow me on Instagram at Aloha Plant Life, or on Facebook, also Aloha Plant Life on Facebook, I do every Sunday, or I try to do every Sunday, a plant styling Sunday video. This was featured in, I think, my second one. This lives in my bedroom on my dresser next to my TV, along with my aluminum plant and a little silver dish that my mom brought me back from one of her trips to France. And then I put this lovely little blue vase in there because it goes with the color scheme of that room. And the vase just lives there just in general because it looks pretty, but when I did this Rhaphidophora Tetrasperma cutting, I decided it would look really cute in there next to that aluminum plant, and it would make a good use for this vase. Having the water in there also creates more humidity by the water evaporating out of here for that aluminum plant during the winter. So this has been in there for, I'd say, a little over a month probably. I'm gonna be straight up honest with you, I haven't changed the water in this once, which I usually change it once a week. If I was gone on vacation like this last time, some of these didn't get changed for 2 weeks. But I find because this is a bigger vessel of water, it's not really getting like funky as quickly. And also it tapers down at the bottom, if you guys can see that. So it tapers down at the bottom. So there is like what looks like some algae type stuff down here, but because of that taper, it's pulling it all down there. The roots are all way up here. And so I think that's why this has done well without me even changing the water, which is fine by me because that's like a lot of water in here to be dumping out and replacing every week. Seems like a little bit of a waste of water, but it looks pretty, right? So these roots have gotten really long. Let me see how well you can see them in here. You see those roots, see how long they've gotten? And I even have these newest roots over here at that top node are actually coming up out of the water at the top. I don't know if you can really see it right now. This is ready to pot up. I do say, for those of you who are new to this, if you can see at the very end of that root, there are none of those offshoots on the roots. It's just one solid piece. Whereas up here, so I feel like I'm gonna drop this, you guys, it's heavier than you think. Up here, there's a bunch of those little offshoots on the roots. So if you see roots, a lot of the sites and research you do will say, when the roots are 1 to 2 inches long, pot it up. I say, wait till you start to see those offshoots on the roots, because your root could be 4 inches long and have no offshoots. Once you get those offshoots, they're actively growing, they're seeking out water more, and they're gonna help to stabilize your plant. When you pot it up, it's kind of like fingers. Like if I didn't have fingers and I was trying to stabilize on something, it might be more difficult. It's kind of like that. So I wait until they have those, but for some plants, you do want to be careful about how long you leave them in water. This is one of them. You leave this in water too long, it's gonna take, it may actually not acclimate to soil, but it may take longer, but you're running the risk that it won't acclimate. Same thing with pothos and philodendron. You want to be a little careful because pothos especially can grow in water like forever. You can grow them in water. It's another plant styling tip that we will discuss in a future plant styling video. But if you don't want to keep them in water, don't let them get too acclimated to the water because then they're not going to acclimate to the soil. So I'm also kind of worried about trying to get this out of here because of how the roots grew. I don't want to break anything, and the cutting kind of makes a little U shape, so I'm trying to kind of hook it back out here without messing up the roots. There we go. We got it. Look at those. You can see this root up here is the one that was trying to poke out of the water. I don't know why it's trying to grow up instead of down. Who knows? Only nature could tell us, or the plant if it could speak. But these roots are super healthy, and you can see how much more robust and thick this root system is than on those peperomias, or even on that begonia. The begonia's roots are pretty small too. It's a much more robust root system. I am gonna go rinse this off real quick. I'll be right back with you. All right, guys, so another thing that I noticed when I was rinsing this, let me see if I can separate this. There's actually a new branch or a new leaf already starting. I don't know if you can see it. I'm trying to get this root out of the way. Let me try this way. You see that right there? This little thing? That's a new leaf starting to branch off there. So this is definitely ready to be potted. We are going to go back to using that other potting soil that's about 2/3 premium potting mix and 1/3 of the perlite. Okay. So for this pot, or potting this up, first of all, let's talk about this. So you need nodes to root, right? This could have also been directly planted into soil and it would have propagated that way as well. I kind of just wanted to have it as decoration in my vase. That's why I water propagated it. But this is technically 2 nodes. So I actually could have cut each of these leaves off on their own and done 2 plants. This was the first time I've cut my Rhaphidophora Tetrasperma, and I think I was just already really nervous about cutting it. So I was kind of like, I'm just gonna take 2 leaves and I'm gonna keep the 2 leaves because I feel like 2 leaves are better than 1 to have enough like coverage to get light and stuff. It's totally absurd, you guys. 1 leaf would have been fine with the node. People do it all the time. You could have removed both leaves and used the node. I don't know. I was just being paranoid because it was the first time I had cut this plant. And you know, that's okay. We can be paranoid sometimes and it's fine because it's still rooted, but that's why I've got roots coming out of 2 spots here. So I could have cut this right here in the middle and done 2 separate propagations, all right? But I didn't, but it's okay because then it'll start to look fuller quicker, right? So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna use one of the 4-inch pots for this one, which you guys probably think, oh, that looks kind of big in there, but not really when you get right down to it. Now I will tell you, this is not gonna live in this pot for very long because those roots are gonna develop really quickly. But once again, I don't wanna drown it putting it in a 6-inch pot. I want it to get kind of root bound before I pot it. It will happen way quicker than the Peperomia. So I'll keep a very close eye on this. We are about 1 month away from spring. When that time hits, this is definitely gonna start going crazy. So probably sometime at the end of spring, maybe early summer, I have a feeling it'll be more like in the spring, I will up pot this to a 6-inch pot. But for right now, we're going in this little 4-inch pot. Once again, we're just gonna put some soil in there. I don't know why I keep trying to dump it out of the bowl. It goes everywhere. This bowl is too big for that. Also, I don't know if you guys have the same problem, but I totally vacuumed and mopped all of my kitchen floor last night. I don't know why. I knew I was gonna pot these today and I've already gotten soil and shit all over the floor. You know, hindsight, should have waited till after I did this video. Or if you're just have a lot of plants like me and you're constantly propagating, I mean, your kitchen floor is probably always gonna be dirty. You're gonna have to be vacuuming and mopping it like 2 or 3 times a week. It's okay. All right, so I've got what I think is enough soil in here. It's about 1/4 of the way full. I might give it a little bit more. I do in this situation want to try, this is going to be tricky. I don't really want to bury this new leaf that's trying to come out. I can, it'll poke up, but I think I'm going to have to because of the way this root is growing straight up. So unfortunately, that's just how it's going to be. So I'm going to put a little bit more. So this is more like 1/3 of the way full here. And I'm just going to kind of wrap that really long root kind of in a little coil in the bottom there. And I'm gonna keep these leaves staying straight up so that flattened out U part of that node is sitting flat on the soil in there. I don't have it like this, obviously, right? It's just sitting down there. And I'm gonna start filling back in around this. Y'all see this root it's just like sticking straight up right here. I don't even know. I'm gonna try and tuck it down in there somehow. I don't know what its deal is. I don't know why it was trying to reach for the light of day or the air like it was drowning or something, because it wasn't. Okay, I've got it tucked in there a little bit into the soil, so that should keep it down. And you will see sometimes roots will do that on cuttings, but most of the time when I see that, it's because you accidentally got your cutting upside down. So, for example, if you were just cutting this plant up into just those nodes with no leaf, you might lose track of which direction was up, which direction had the leaf. And if you plant it upside down, then the plant can get confused and the roots will start going up instead of down into the soil. But this obviously was not the case for this plant. This plant was upright the whole time. So I'm not really sure what that's all about. If anybody knows, once again, please leave a comment below to let all of us know. I love it when we all share educational tips and learning experiences. And I'm telling you right now, learning experiences are the best way. Talking to other people in the community about what their experience has been is the best way. I honestly, I do some online research for things, but I really just try to stick to like professional journals or people who are actually botanists or cultivators or growers, because a lot of the stuff you guys find out there is misinformation. you know, it's people just regurgitate things that they've read other places or heard other places that they have no foundation for knowing if it's actually worked. And that's unfortunate. So anything I share with you is based on my personal experience in combination with the research, but I'm not just going to tell you something that I have found out researching if I haven't tested it to prove that it works. And if it works for me, sometimes that doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody. It just depends on your environment and your situations. But that's something we can always troubleshoot together. So anytime you have a question, like if I say, this is what I did, and you do it and it's not working for you, always reach out and ask, because it may just be a situation of, you know, maybe I live in a more humid environment, and so it worked better for me. You live in a drier environment, so you need more humidity to make the same thing work. You know, there's little things like that that could be differences, but it's usually something that we can work through. So always feel free to reach out in the comments, DM me on Instagram, send me a message on Facebook. I will be honest, you guys, I am these days on Instagram way more than Facebook. So that is going to be your easier place to find me. I also do a lot of fun reels on there, kind of giving you plant tips, styling tips, what plants you can put where in your house, so check those out. So I got this potted up nicely now. Look at it. So once again, I will water that right after this video. And then this is the first time, like I said, that I propagated this. So I'm not 100% certain. Actually, I am certain. I will probably put this on my propagation cart in that same room, and that propagation cart, once again, is directly in the window, so it's getting even more light. So that's probably where I'm gonna start this one. Once again, if you start your propagation somewhere and then they start doing something funky, try changing it up. Like either they're getting too much light maybe, or they're not getting enough. Try moving them around. So if I put this in that north facing window and it starts doing something that I'm not liking, I'm pretty much gonna assume that it probably actually needs a little bit more light to really develop and grow. And I will probably move it right over here to my kitchen window, which is a west facing window, where it'll get a little bit more light throughout the day and especially in the afternoon, but it's not gonna be getting totally like scorched like it would in one of my southern facing windows. So just remember, sometimes it's just trial and error. And depending on where you live, your north facing light could be way stronger than mine. And if you live in the southern hemisphere, your north facing light is actually the equivalent of my south facing light. So don't forget that. Anybody in the south, did I say northern? If I said northern, I'm sorry. Anybody in the southern hemisphere is the opposite of us in the north. Our southern facing windows are our brightest windows. North is the least bright. For you guys, like in Australia, it's the opposite. Your north facing windows are the brightest and your south facing windows are the least bright. So if I say north, just remember for you, that's a south window, okay? So I'm gonna set this aside, I'm gonna water it once we're done here. And then I am gonna thoroughly rinse this out, and then I'm just gonna put it back in there with no propagation in it right now. The next time I might use it for a propagation in there is whenever I finally get around to propagating my monstera, because I think a monstera cutting would just look awesome sticking up out of this vase. Yeah, I don't think anything else would really go with the decor in there very well, and the aluminum plant, so it will probably just sit there being a nice little pretty pop of color, which is why originally I'd put it in there anyway. Yeah, so you guys, that is pretty much it. I am, like I said, gonna finish potting up some of these, but y'all don't have to watch me do it all. We've already covered potting those up. Like I said, I do have my salsa dancer hibiscus, which I will be potting up as well, but I have done a previous video on that. It's actually my first water to soil propagation video on here, so go back and find that if you want to learn some more about the salsa dancer hibiscus. And there is another video that will be out on that plant specifically, just highlighting that plant, coming up here soon. But yeah, thanks you guys for joining me for this totally impromptu video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please click that like button if you did, and subscribe to keep following along with all of my content, and be sure to check out my Instagram page at Aloha Plant Life, or same name on Facebook. And I look forward to seeing you guys again soon. Aloha.